Shut up and sit down.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Ken Frederick Podcast, episode 119, Black Superhero History Month. I want to say thank you for listening. If you just stumbled across us on the interwebs, check us out at kfpodcast.com, at kfpodcast on Facebook, at Ken Fred Podcast on the Twitter, and also check us out at Ken Frederick Podcast and all your other social media needs. Please check us out on SoundCloud. We have fresh weekly content. We just put one up recently, so check it out and see what your thoughts are. We got Justin via satellite.
Yo!
We got Brock.
Hi.
And we have Donald.
Hello.
And we're going to be talking about our favorite black superheroes and a little bit of history, and figure with Black Panther right around the corner, we should talk about it.
And it also being Black History Month.
That too.
A lot of people like the WWE, the specials on black wrestlers that have broken through. So we figure why not for superheroes as well too. And actually, to be honest with you, studying up on this a little bit, it really is interesting. Lot of the history behind it, and just how far they've come with some of it, and actually really how much further they have to go with it for a lot of it.
Yeah,
too.
they really do.
Yeah.
Because when we start looking up as far as like black superheroes, you're like, wow, there's not really as many as you think that there are. There's some mainstream ones here, but they're really few and far between. It's really an area where it could grow with some newer ones, I think.
I agree.
Yep.
Which could be needed.
Very much so.
Yeah. So, going back a little history, just reading up on it a little bit here, there really wasn't a lot of portrayal of black people in comics. You had all the way back in 1947, they had All Negro Comics #1, which 1947, I mean, this is really, it was really, really stereotypical. There was villains that were like in zoot suit style, jive talking, muggers, a lot of racial distortion in the way they drew them, because it was all drawn by white writers and white artists, so they drew them very distorted and very. The main guy whose name was Ace Harlem, who was like a hero. I mean, it was really, really bad. It was really, really bad. They had two issues called Negro Home Heroes. And different, I mean, just really, 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 really terrible, the portrayal of them in there. I mean, they really didn't have a lot of anything. This was the 40s. I mean, 40s were rough. There's stuff in here in the 50s that they portrayed them in, this was interesting, in the 1940s in Timely Comics, okay?
Which was before Marvel Comics.
Yeah, so with Captain America's sidekick, Bucky, who had like the Young Allies. Remember the Young Allies?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
There was a character, a young black character, and they actually called him Whitewash.
Wow.
And he looked like a young white boy in black face paint, rather than an actual African-American character.
Oh, my.
How terrible is that?
That's ridiculous.
I mean, this is in the 40s, but this was still pretty terrible.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, they were bad. Timely Comics was bad. DC wasn't any better. There wasn't really a lot there. The interesting thing I found is the first African-American character to headline his own series was a character named Lobo, who was a fictional Western character.
Wow.
I didn't know that.
Never heard of him.
That. I wonder what the value of a book like that is. He only made 2 issues.
What company put it out?
Dell Comics.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
But yeah, he's just guy here with a gun. Lobo. Interesting,
He's
right?
probably cooler than the actual Lobo.
He probably is, yeah.
I wonder if that's what Michael Bay's going to do.
That's the Lobo he's making a movie of.
But, there's lots of stuff in here that, different things that they had. Obviously, the first one to really, ironically, this movie coming out, to really be one of the first to break on the scene was Black Panther in 1966.
Mm-hmm.
He was the one that sort of broke down. I'm reading about, I just opened up a link to Lobo. He was really the one that really started it off. And that's why I think his significance of his movie coming out is such a big deal. I know there's a lot of hype around it. It's annoying you. But, he's come Black Panther's come a long way from the 60s of trying to be...
I've always liked Black Panther.
Mm-hmm.
I think the movie's just getting too much hype, and I'm a guy that doesn't like a whole lot of hype around myself.
Hype bothers you.
Yeah.
You're not one of the hype bros.
Yeah.
And then of course you had Storm. She came along in the 60s as well too. What was she? 63 or Storm would have been later on 67.
Giant Size X-Men #1. So yeah, 67.
Or maybe early even 70s for that one. I forget. But yeah, those are some of the. Do you have any early knowledge of any other ones other than that one there?
No, I just know like the stereotypical drawings from like the Tijuana comics that you'd get from like, that were famous in World War II. The flip book kind of like that had very rough, it was very racist. It was very racially toned, and it, So.
Well, yeah, they mentioned about the physical characteristics.
Exactly.
They always drew them, their black faces very oddly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at the time, if you were a white artist, you drew every nationality very oddly.
Yeah.
Like, even if you go back and look at Superman comics from like Action and whatnot, the Asian people during World War II, Germans, and during that whole time period was just nothing. It was ridiculed with racial stereotypes all throughout their drawing, and it's very disturbing.
Mm-hmm. It is. It's really disturbing to read. I mean, I know it's easy for white people to say it's disturbing. I just imagine what it's like to read this. If you're a young black kid reading about comics, and you go back and read the history on it and see how terrible it was. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's the same way in movies, the way they were portrayed in movies, but the way they were portrayed in comics and the way they were drawn, very ignorant.
Yeah, ignorant's a great word for it.
Yeah.
And then that sort of takes us to, the 70s where you get the black exploitation.
Exportation.
Okay, go ahead. Get it out. Go ahead. You're not going to be able to move on to it.
I'm done.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Because I saw the look of excitement. I haven't seen that excitement in you since you found out Chris Jericho was going to wrestle Kenny Omega. Are you sure you're all right?
I'm all right.
Okay. Or when you thought I missed the exit at Sheets. That's when you got really excited. You love when I up, don't you? You get so excited.
That's usually me up.
Bleep that one, Justin. Thank you. So, in this era, this is where you had sort of the, this is like late 60s throughout the 70s. The characters they created in this era were this was also very ghetto stereotypical.
Oh, yeah.
This was the days of Shaft and movies of that.
Foxy Brown,
different stuff like that. So you had characters like Luke Cage, Bronze Tiger, Black Lightning, Misty Knight, even Falcon to some extent when he was first introduced.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Falcon was, because I have his first appearance. It's interesting how he comes aboard. He doesn't look like his typical Falcon. All green, yellow, red, like.
He was a street hustler.
Yeah.
Who was rescued by Captain America.
And he turned him into the Falcon. Then he had Redbird.
Yeah.
Or Red Wing.
Which not as how he's portrayed now. You know how different.
Oh, now he's so cool. Like back then, he was the word. He just talked to a bird.
Yeah.
Had a suit.
Well, it is interesting that speaking of this time frame and these characters. I mean, if you look at them now, the ones I just mentioned, Luke Cage has his own Netflix series.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right out in the forefront there, popular. Bronze Tiger really so much, but like Black Lightning just debuted a TV show, doing really well. Panther, obviously with the movie coming out, Misty Knight. These characters are all Falcon. Falcon was leading the Avengers, was Captain America for a while.
Oh yeah.
So they've really, I feel, come a long way, and have grown from. I mean, you remember how they used to portray Luke Cage?
Yeah, the way he talked was embarrassing.
Sweet Christmas.
Yeah, that's white people trying to write dialogue.
And it's
for an African American character is
they have I feel like no history.
No clue how they would actually talk.
Yeah. They just had their own idea of how, but they watched no actual knowledge.
Yeah. They watched Shaft and were like, "This is what Luke Cage would sound like," and this is how Black Lightning. Hey, it's Black Lightning. Yeah, I always go back to Black Lightning to that one. Remember the Death of Superman on Saturday Night Live when they did it and they. And they had Black Lightning show up and no one knew who he was. And it was portrayed by...
was it Eddie Murphy?
No, because that was like in the 90s. It was the actor was in like a lot of those Chris Farley movies at that time. He was just recently on...
Tim Meadows?
Tim Meadows. And he's like, "Hey, I'm Black Lightning. Hey." And they're like, "Hey, Black Lightning, remember me?" And they're like, "No, who's that?" They had no idea who he was. That's a good skit. Poor Black Lightning's doing all right though now. He's got his own show. He's up in the forefront. It's cool, and look how far Storm's come.
Yeah,
Storm I think is one of the most developed characters.
Yeah.
I mean, with her being like, being a street hustler from Africa,
Yeah.
and then she comes over and she becomes a woman of prominence, goes back over, tries to help tribes with
I love Storm. I
Yeah.
mean, I think Storm, to me, is such a staple. She was on my list. I'll just talk about her now. I always thought she was a staple in the X-Men. Like you had to have some version of Storm somewhere in there to make it legit for me that it's the X-Men. She's a rock with them. And they've changed her over the years and brought her back. Remember when she went through that 80s scene where she was wearing the leather and the mohawk?
I love Mohawk.
I love Mohawk Storm and Leather Storm. That's why I love the character Bloodstorm so much that's in the current X-Men Gold run.
Okay.
She was from Mutant X.
Of course, then that's why I have a
Well, I love Mutant X. I have a special place in my heart for Mutant X, but it's that look, and she's cool. She's a vampire. She does weather stuff, and then she turns into mist. She's in the current X-Men run right now, and Cyclops can't stop checking her out, and Jean Grey keeps reading his mind. He's like, Storm's really amazing. She was like, you're looking at her butt. You're checking her out in her leather pants, and she's like, stop projecting those thoughts out into my head while we're trying to fight the Brotherhood. He's like, stop reading my mind. He's just obsessed with checking out Bloodstorm, but it's pretty funny. But yeah, she's a great character. I think that I don't like how they portrayed her in the 90s cartoon. They made her too preachy.
Yeah.
She'd always go in those long diatribes about what the wind was going to do, and you're like, Storm, just knock this isn't how she talks in the comic at all. Mm-hmm. But, I didn't really like Halle Berry as her either. But
I didn't think that she gave her... I think Storm needs to be more grand. I don't think she gave her the grandiose, almost like the cartoon. I like that Storm.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I like the relationship that she also had with Black Panther, too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They'll never get into it in the movie universe, but...
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure she was one of the first African-American characters to be like a forefront leader of a team.
Probably.
She led an X-Men team. I think that's one of the first where she was out in the forefront. She's led several, especially as a woman also, but yeah.
She led the Fantastic Four with Black Panther.
Did she? Yeah, her and Black Panther had a cool relationship. It'd be cool, with them merging that, if you could see that portrayed in the comics a little bit, too.
Yeah.
And the movies.
Yeah. But it won't ever happen, but yeah.
It won't happen, but it would be cool. So there you go. Next group, thought we should mention the Milestone comic universe a little bit.
Milestone was great.
Milestone debuted in 1993, all by African-American artists and writers. Dwayne McDuffie was the guy that was out the forefront of that as well, with Dennis Cohen, Michael Davis, and Derek Dingle.
Too many D names.
A lot of D names.
Stan Lee wrote all these names.
McDuffie was pretty well done. Didn't he also help out with the Static Shock cartoon?
Yeah.
All that stuff as well, too?
Probably. Mm-hmm. The only thing I ever read out of that was Blood Syndicate, their team book.
It was.
Yeah, he did Static Shock. He did Teen Titans, too, and a lot of that. Justice League for 4 years. He was involved in all that.
Yeah, I mean, they had a good run with Milestone. I don't know if any of you guys or listeners have seen the documentary series Secret World of Comics or Secret History of Comics. It was on AMC. They did a whole episode about Milestone, and it was probably my favorite of the whole series. And it just talks about how McDuffie just was at odds with the publishers at DC and would try and slip things in, and that's kind of what got them in trouble, and DC quit funding them. It's really interesting. It's worth a watch, but it would probably still be going strong today had they not taken their shots at DC when they did.
Well, I think it's on its way back.
Yeah, that's the rumor. They said that at the end of the episode that they were doing a relaunch soon. So I hope to see that because there's a lot of really strong characters in that whole line that they put out. It was really, really well done.
Yeah, I mean you have Icon. Obviously, Hardware. Hardware, I think, was the first book to be released under the Milestone label. Rocket, Dharma, there's a couple other different characters. Down the road, then they started releasing characters that weren't just African-American. I think they had like a Hispanic character as well, too, and a couple of other different people that they sort of moved into it. They had the Shadow Cabinet was another one of their books and different things. Hardware was like an Iron Man type guy.
And the book sold really well.
Did they?
Yeah, they were really high sellers according to this documentary series. They were some of DC's most popular books because they hit a demographic that wasn't getting anything published for them.
Yeah.
And it was all done by African American creators, which was more realistic to the characters and more genuine, and people really appreciated that.
Yeah. I really liked in the Young Justice cartoon when they decided to incorporate these milestone characters into the universe.
Mm-hmm.
They brought them in like they were regular, like they were always there. They put Rocket with the Young Justice with the teen group, and Icon was with the older ones. And I thought they were cool. Rocket was cool. I always liked her with her different. She had an inertia belt, would gave her these different things and shields and stuff she would do. Her powers weren't as like Icon was very Superman-ish. She was a little different, but they were cool. Icon and Rocket were cool, and that I liked that they gave a little shout out to them in that.
And Icon was always an ultra conservative, which I thought was pretty funny.
That is funny.
And the whole there's a cover shot of a Static book, which really upset DC Comics because it was a safe sex issue. The story was all about safe sex, and they had a condom pictured on the floor in his bedroom, and that upset the publishers at DC, and that's what.
So they had a falling out over.
They had a falling out over that.
But then he went on, and Static Shock was a big success for them.
Mm-hmm.
They had a cartoon; it ran for a while. I think a lot of people watched that one. That was right around the time of like the Justice League cartoon and that.
Yeah, and it tied in with Batman Beyond. Like
Yeah.
they went into the future on that show, and then they encountered Batman Beyond and all
I always
that
thought
stuff.
Static was a good character. I liked him. I always wish they would have done a little bit more with him.
He was a lot more powerful in the cartoon though than he was in the comic.
Yeah, with his little.
He could fly and stuff.
They did and again in Young Justice they did him too as well. They brought him in a version of him into there as well too. So he's cool. Mm-hmm. I hope it comes back. I think it's a good time for it.
I would love to read that stuff. Because I don't think I had the appreciation I would have for it now as a kid. Like I think a lot of it was over my head.
And, with stuff like DC doing their own streaming service and that, why not? It'd be good to have a couple TV series that are milestone characters.
Mm-hmm.
An Icon and Rocket show.
Yeah.
Or Hardware.
Definitely.
Hardware would make for a cool, Netflix-type streaming service show. That would be good. I think that's a good way to, look what it did for Luke Cage.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about some of the impact some of these characters had in other forms of media, not just comics. Obviously, like with Black Panther coming out, this is a big deal because it's. I don't want to say it's the first because I think Blade was that. So
yeah,
Blade was awesome. The first Blade movie, way ahead of its time.
Blade came out in '98.
A great movie.
Wesley Snipes, that was the lead. African American lead in there, superhero, and I thought that one. I thought the original Blade was fantastic. I didn't like the third one. The second one was okay.
Yeah, they got progressively worse as they went along, but the first one, I could still watch that today and think it's a good movie.
Yeah.
The effects are dated, but other than that, I mean, good story, good acting. It's a solid movie.
It's just a basic storyline, which is what makes it good.
And here's another thing. When I looked this up and typed in, like, black superhero character movies, boy, the list you get is poor. I'm like, thank God Panther, other than Blade, and with Panther coming out and, stuff like that happen, I'm like, Meteor Man comes up as well.
God.
I'm like, Meteor Man was a horrible movie.
It wasn't written as like a superhero movie. It was written as a comedy.
It was, but some parts were serious.
Oh.
And then you had Steel, Spawn. Really, that's about it. I mean, there was like Blank Man. I'm like, Blank Man was a comedy. I'm like, well, there really hasn't been that many. For it to be 2018, and we're just getting Black Panther now compared to what some of these other movies are. Hancock, I thought, was a decent movie in 2008. I know that's original material.
I enjoyed that movie a lot.
But I like Hancock. I thought they should have done more with Will
that
Smith.
kind of universe.
Yeah, I thought there was a pretty good universe to explore a little bit more and where they get their powers from. I liked him. Mm-hmm. I thought that was an original idea of a character that is
just Superman
really
level
strong, but just didn't give a shit.
Yeah,
it was cool.
I mean, my favorite line in that movie is when the lady's like, "Why don't you just go up? You have the car, just go up. Why do you have to hit that train?" And he's like, "I don't know, I don't want to go up." And the lady's like, "I smell alcohol." He's like, "'Cause I've been drinking, bitch." they're all like afraid of him because he's so drunk and mean. You could have just went up. That's a good movie. What's his name from Arrested Development? Jason Bateman's pretty funny in that movie too.
I feel like that.
Oh, you got quiet again. What happened? Did the speaker shut off on old Justin over there?
It did. Let me turn you back on.
Turn on Justin.
Press his buttons.
How do I turn this on? There we go.
Let's see. Talk now.
All right, is that better?
Yeah,
Yep.
you're better.
All
There
right.
you go. Okay.
He's back in the action.
He's back. The only thing about Hancock that annoys me is it turns for the worse and gets weird when Charlize Theron just starts making tornadoes and all that stuff. Like, the movie takes a weird flow.
Yeah, well, their whole origin was like they were angels or something.
There was some kind of angels or something.
And the closer they were together, the more powerful the two of them got.
She got more powerful, he got weaker.
Is that how it was?
Yeah, because he started to, like, die and stuff. It was odd.
Yeah,
it was good up to that point.
Yeah.
Everything to that point I
then
really
it got weird.
enjoyed. Then it got odd. I'm like, what are we doing? Why are we fighting? And, you know, that part got weird.
we actually got to the story. That's when it sucked.
Yeah.
But the story before about a guy and he was going through rehab and redeeming himself and trying to look good in the public eye, I thought that was a good story. The parts about we're angels and we're flying around and they're like, it got kind of strange. She's like, I don't want anyone to know my secret. And then she throws him through a house and, like, takes the whole wall out. I'm like, well, how are you going to explain that?
Wasn't it Jason Bateman's wife?
Yeah.
But he didn't know she had powers and stuff.
Weird.
So there you go. Let's go down to name some of our favorites here and why and talk about that a little bit. So let's start over here with Brock.
Two of my all-time favorite Avengers are Rage and Triathlon. I mention them on the show all the time.
I knew they were going to make that list. I knew it.
But now, I was looking into it more, and their origin stories are a little racist. Like, Triathlon was an Olympic medalist track runner who got kicked out of the Olympic organization for using steroids.
Okay, I remember this now, yeah.
And then he joins a cult, and the cult gives him the powers of the original 3D man, and he thought it was just a gift from God.
Okay.
And then he was put on the Avengers to appease this group, so he was always, like, calling himself the token black man on the team.
Yeah, I remember that. This was during whose run? Was this like George Perez?
George Perez.
And Kurt Busiek.
Yeah.
And now I'm looking at it like, that's really not good.
He was cool, though.
His powers are great.
Yeah.
3 times the peak human strength, endurance, and speed.
Yeah, and agility and all
And
that.
agility, like 3 times. So if you figure, like, what's the peak human, like, Braun Strowman's probably his peak human strength.
So there's like 3 Braun Strowmans,
He's
3 Usain Bolts.
Yeah, 3 times as good as any of those guys. And he also has the 3D man ability to see everyone's true identity. It was always thought that it came from the glasses that 3D man wore, but it's all part of the actual powers. The glasses were just for effect. Okay. And he didn't learn that until recently in the comics that he didn't need the glasses.
Is he still around?
He's still around, but they haven't used him in a while.
Yeah, I haven't seen him in any Avenger books pop up. When they made the call for No Surrender, he wasn't in the list.
Yeah. But, I mean, I always liked the character because I grew up on 90s Avengers, and he was very prominent in that.
And he's your favorite name to say.
Triathlon.
Who do you want to have in this tournament? Rage and Triathlon. Rage wore that, like, cheetah mask or whatever.
It was a luchador mask.
Yeah, Rage, he's a 13-year-old boy who was on his way home from basketball practice when he was exposed to radioactive waste that aged him to a full adult man and then gave him, like, he continued to develop powers later on.
Yeah.
And he's super strong, super fast, and he can't be injured.
I like when he was on the New Warriors.
Yeah.
For a while. I thought he was cool with that.
Another one of my favorites is Night Thrasher.
Yeah, I like Thrasher. I like that original New Warriors team.
Mm-hmm.
When they expanded out and added Rage and Silhouette, they were still cool. You know, they started to get a little more. They had like Turbo and a couple. Started to get a little there, but that original team was cool. It was different. It was unique for its time. And Thrasher was cool. I know people say he's kind of like a poor man's Punisher. When he lost the skateboard was a little much.
I always thought he was a poor man's Batman.
When he lost the skateboard, he was a lot cooler. Like, I always thought the armor he wore was pretty sweet. And he was a good leader. He was good for that team. Like, you know, he had Nova was like a hothead, and Speedball was uncontrollable. It was like kind of a team of misfits, and, you know, he kept him in thing. I know they've said sometimes he's like everything's a poor man this, but I liked Thrasher at the time.
Yeah, once he got rid of the skateboard. He's stupider than
hell now. I think they've made him really dumb now. From the last I remember.
Interesting trivia about Rage and Triathlon. They were respectively number 8 and 9 on the list of the top 100 worst Avengers.
Really? And they're your favorites.
And they're my favorites.
There you go. You got any other ones?
I like Luke Cage since Bendis' run on New Avengers.
He really did a lot for him.
Pre that, he was just kind of like a background character who didn't really do much. But then Bendis just pushed him to the forefront, made him a major player.
Yeah.
And he's been, a top guy ever since.
Yeah.
Top guy.
Top guy. All right. What about you, Justin?
So my top 2 you guys have already mentioned, but is Blade and then Black Lightning. Since the show has come out, I really like that character.
Me too.
They're developing him well in the show. I was doing some reading about him today. the fact that he's now a retired superhero, and he was trying to help the community that he grew up in just by being himself.
Being the principal of the school.
I just think he's a great character, and I can't wait to continue on and see where the show goes. I might go back and pick up some of the books and read some of the books and, see what he was like in the comics.
He was
and then
good
Blade,
in Outsiders. He was interesting with that group.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of like working for Batman. Everyone works for Batman.
He's a solid character. What about Black Vulcan?
Black Vulcan is... Explain who Black Vulcan is.
Black Vulcan is Black Lightning, but without the name, because they couldn't get the rights to the character for some reason for the Super Friends cartoon. Challenge
of the Super Friends when they had the Legion of Doom against the 13 members of the Justice League. They wanted to use Black Lightning because they tried to like racially split it up a little bit. So they had Samurai, who was an Asian, Apache Chief, who was an American Indian, and they wanted to use Black Lightning to get an African American character, but they couldn't use the name for some reason, so they called him Black Vulcan. And they made him turn into an actual lightning bolt, which was so retarded and dumb. And then they eventually just put Cyborg on the team.
Did you ever see the episode of Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law, with all those guys on it? Black Vulcan's great. He's like, I wanted to be Super Volt. He's like, they wouldn't let me.
It's great.
It's a great episode.
So what do you like about Blade?
He was like, in '98 when it came out, I was super into like vampires and stuff. And
I want a picture of that. I want you with dark hair and like goth.
I didn't cosplay as
listening to
Bajas. I read
in the
a lot of vampire books. Any vampire movie I could get my hands on.
Yeah.
And then when this came out with Wesley Snipes kicking ass and cutting people's heads off with that sword, and it blew my mind.
Yeah, it's good. I miss Wesley Snipes. I wish he could have been around in the MCU as that version of him now. He's a little old now, but
he's probably still in good shape.
It was good. What about you, Ken?
Well, mine are more recent. I wouldn't say they're not your traditional superheroes. I've always liked, when I first started reading Walking Dead, Michonne and Tyrese really exemplified what black characters could be in comic books. Strong in the forefront. They weren't stereotypical in any way. Michonne, when her first...
She had a samurai sword.
She did. Uh-huh. Her first introduction just being so strong and in the forefront and like not taking anyone's shit to grace. Tyrese's interaction with Rick is some of the better reading in that series. Uh-huh. Now, they're nothing as shitty as they are in the TV show. So if you like them in the TV show, you can screw yourself.
Yeah, read Michonne in the comics. She's so much better than the one on the TV
She doesn't need to follow...
Nothing against the actress. She's great.
Oh, she's wonderful. Yeah. But the way they write it's stupid. And Tyrese in that show is horrible. Just crying all the time. And the best part of the Walking Dead comic was when Tyrese goes into the gymnasium and kills like 100 zombies after his daughter died.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was great. He's like, all right, I'm locking myself in here for a while.
Yeah.
And he didn't take any shit either from Rick. Like, it just shows that they can have... And they were written well, and their language didn't seem like it was out of the ordinary. I don't know. I always liked them.
Yeah.
They're my favorite characters in that comic until I stopped reading it. But there's also some other ones that like. I liked Cloak and Dagger a lot. I think Cloak is a cool character. That's another horrible story intro to a character.
Drugs.
Yeah, it took scientific drugs and they got power from it. That shit ain't gonna fly nowadays in Marvel universe. That's something. But, probably those two, and there's others been said. Like, I always like Luke Cage. Mostly from, I do watch, like, Foxy Brown and Shaft. I enjoy that kind of stuff. I think it's funny where we come from that time period. Yeah. And that's why I always kind of like Luke, because it's a nod to that, but...
Yeah, it was cool when they did a little flashback to it in the Netflix show.
And he's wearing the yellow, yeah. And the chain, or his Power Man, all that stuff.
Good. Anything else? Is that good?
That's it. That's all I got.
Well, for me, right off the top, not giving them orders or numbers or anything, but I really love Jon Stewart, Green Lantern.
He's a great character.
I'm a big Green Lantern fan. You know, Hal Jordan's one of my favorite. But Jon Stewart is such a good example of how you can write a great African-American character again, being in the forefront. I mean, right now, he's the commander of the entire Green Lantern Corps. He's Corps commander. He don't take any shit from the Guardians. When he found out the Guardians were coming back recently, he told them, we don't want you. And they were like, and he actually got them to the point where they were like, can we just live here too? We won't bother you. We'll just give you advice. He's like, the only time I want your advice is when I come ask for it. Other than that, stay out of our way. We were running things fine. And like, only Stewart can really talk to him like that. He's a great character. I liked him in a lot of people. I remember being upset when they put him in the Justice League cartoon.
I love that he was on that.
I liked it too. I thought he was great.
They never denied that Hal Jordan was around.
Yeah,
like they've mentioned him, and
you need him. He's good. He's a great character. He's a character I hope we see in movies.
That's the Green Lantern I hope is in the Justice League movie.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind seeing him. I wish they would take John Diggle from Arrow and just turn him into John Stewart and make him Green Lantern and get rid of his stupid persona, and then they can have Arrow and Lantern on that show together.
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
That'd be perfect.
That would be cool.
Yeah, just say his name isn't.
That's just an alias.
It's just an alias. He's really John Stewart. And then I'll be like, yes, let's get him a ring.
He's John Diggle Stewart.
Yeah, let's get going.
His origin would pretty much line up. Former military, all that.
This season they've been talking about how he wishes he was like in the forefront as a superhero. I'm like, get this dude a Green Lantern ring. He looks like John Stewart. I mean, he could. That's who I would want to play Stewart in a movie is him because he's big and he's a bad dude. He's a cool guy. He's a great actor. You were going to say something, but he's not. I also love Cyborg. We talked about this before. I think Cyborg, I get personally offended when people go, oh, they just put him on a team because he's the only black character they could find. Cyborg is great if you read Justice League. Not New 52 bullshit, but if you read stuff now, he's a great, unique character.
He's been around forever.
Yeah.
Yes.
He deserves...
He's paid his dues.
Yeah, he's paid his dues. He deserves that spot with the League. Even with Manhunter possibly coming back now, I can't wait to see the dynamic between the two, where you have Manhunter talking to people in their brains and Cyborg linking them up.
Oh, brain talking and
I'd
linking
love to see the two of them work together and do stuff together. It's never really been done before. We talked about Storm. One of my Marvel characters I really like. I like Patriot.
Patriot's
I forgot
good.
about him.
Yeah.
I like Patriot's run where his grandfather was actually the first Captain America, Isaiah. And, the things they did with him. Patriot's another cool character that I wish they would explore more with. I wish he was in the movies. I would like to see Patriot and Bucky together in a Cap movie, sort of arguing, because he has that sort of dominating, opinionated person, how he is. I would like to see more of that.
Didn't he get his powers originally from drugs, though, too?
I thought he got his from his grandfather's Hereditary.
It was a blood transfusion.
Yeah, but first he was taking MGH, I think.
Oh, yeah, because he wanted to
They
be
need
like
to drop that shit and just make it that it's Hereditary from his grandfather.
Well, it is now. Like, he has the powers from the blood transfusion.
Because he's cool. He uses the old Cap shield. He's a cool character. I like the look of him.
Marvel for a long time did a lot of drugs to get powers.
They did.
Yeah, like the whole turn of the century, all those characters got their powers from taking MGH.
Yeah.
Which is...
And my last one, probably if I have to say my favorite out of the group here, is Spawn.
Spawn.
Al Simmons is a great character. The Spawn comic book, everything they've touched on from ghettos and poverty and all the subjects that McFarlane has crossed has been really well done. Al Simmons is a great character. His book's really good right now. It's been good for a long time. The movie sucked that he was in, but I'm hopeful for this new one. I hope it's good. I hope they cast somebody great as Al Simmons, because I think Al Simmons is one of the all-time great comic book characters. I think, even by himself, he's a great character, but he's cool with Spawn. He was a groundbreaker, too, getting his own. He's probably the longest-running African-American comic book, wouldn't you say?
What are they up to, 500?
No, they're...
Like almost 300.
They're almost 300, something like that.
Okay.
But he wasn't always Spawn, though, was he? Wasn't there other people?
For a little while, someone else took his place, but he's been Spawn for a long...
Is he back as Spawn?
He's back as Spawn now, yeah.
It's been over 20 years.
Yeah. I mean, I can't... I don't think... I mean, you've had Blade books and all that other one, but
just as an indie book going that long.
They've all been canceled and come back. Panther, too.
Well, Shadowhawk at the same time is that... they're very parallel. African-American, superheroes. But Shadowhawk never went near the...
Yeah, he never had Spawn longevity that he had. He's had crazy longevity, Right now, he kind of works with Cyan, who's older. She was a little girl.
Yeah.
And I think she has powers. She has witch powers and stuff like that.
Witch powers.
But he's cool. So I like Spawn. He's good. But there you go. And that's it. So hopefully we see more of them. I think there's an audience for it. Mm-hmm. I think you should do more with it. It'd be nice to see him more developing of this. I like seeing this other than just changing characters.
Yes.
I don't want to see, well, all we're going to do is turn Spider-Man black, or we're going to turn Thor black. Like, it's, like the Milestone guys that didn't create new stuff, create new, cool, interesting characters. Spawn was an example 20 years ago, and it can be done again.
I think Miles Morales, just to say that, is an interesting character. I like him.
Yeah.
But it wasn't because they just turned Peter Parker black. Like,
No, it was a whole new character.
yeah, and that's why it's good. Like, trying to think of some other ones we haven't really touched on.
Bishop.
Signal. Bishop.
Well, I really like Signal. Signal's new in the Batman universe. I know a lot of people get down on more Batman, but he's a cool character to read, too. And he's different, and he's not a Robin, and he's just his own character. He's cool.
I'd like to see some African-American villains.
Yeah.
That's what we were having a conversation setting this up, and I'm like, I want to talk about some villains other than Black Manta.
Yeah.
And we couldn't think of any.
Yeah, because there's not a lot. Yeah.
It's like Diamondback. It turns into like the stereotypical,
It does.
yeah, villains from these comics.
Nobody brought up Big Wheel.
Big Wheel.
Or Bishop.
He just said Bishop.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
Big Wheel was great.
Let us know some ones you like. Let us know some ones that you think's cool. And we'll see Black Panther next week and review that, too.
It's going to be
Yep.
good.
All right, everyone, please like, share, subscribe, invite, tell your friends, and kiss your mother on the mouth.
Later.
Later.